These fringe factions that are trying to push this agenda on America are weaponizing it in such a way that if you dare ask a question, God forbid you disagree, you're going to be targeted and they're going to come after you hammer and tongs.
Dr. Phil has had enough of the woke agenda, and this time, he's not holding back. Dr. Phil, who we know from his renowned talk show and hearing others talking about their life's most challenging situations, is now speaking up himself. The famous American psychologist, author, and TV personality believes that bigger social trends are destroying the fabric of America. Dr. Phil has become a powerful voice in the fight against woke culture, which he sees as a dangerous shift in how society thinks and behaves. From cancel culture to entitlement programs, he's tackling these issues head-on in front of millions. His determination to push back against this movement led him to write We've Got Issues, a book about fighting the woke agenda and restoring unity in America. His message is clear. It's time to end the fear, start talking, and move forward together.
This is probably going to be regarded as the most dangerous book that's published in 2024.
Dr. Phil is shocked by the extent to which the woke people have gone to cancel even the most harmless words and phrases. Let's hear this.
We have a graphic of words or phrases that now you can't say. And I'm just curious, some of these maybe are obvious, but if you know why some of these are on the list now.
Mom and dad, I see why that would be up there.
Okay, why would mom and dad be up there?
So why is mom and dad suddenly a phrase you can get canceled for? From a neutral standpoint, it might seem like mom and dad is an ordinary phrase, but woke people see it completely differently. Let's hear this woke couple's explanation.
I have a daughter with another woman, and when it's being taught in school that, that's just the norm, that it's just mom and dad, it kind of offends us because we are lesbians, you know what I mean? We come from the community and it makes us feel like we're not important enough to be called mom and mom or parents.
See how this woke person says that she doesn't like the phrase mom and dad because she herself has a child with another woman. This is exactly what Dr. Phil refers to when he talks about the woke movement. He believes it's nowadays impossible to keep up with the agenda as it goes against common sense and logic. But more than that, he finds it troubling how woke culture insists on altering behavior just to accommodate others' feelings, prompting him to ask this important question.
So should I stop saying that?
No, not
because you're mom and mom?
No.
The video continues with the woman expressing her feeling left out by the mom and dad phrase, and proposes that we should all use parents instead. But Dr. Phil raises an important point here. Phil acknowledges that families come in many forms, and he's more than willing to accommodate different family structures, such as mom and mom or dad and dad. But Phil doesn't agree with canceling the traditional mom and dad structure. Instead of canceling one phrase, why not simply add new ones? Dr. Phil sees this as another example of how the woke movement doesn't just express their opinions. Instead, they impose them, forcing their emotions and experiences onto others around them. They establish rules on language and behavior, and if you don't adhere to them, you're at risk of being canceled. Dr. Phil highlights how cancel culture extends beyond words and phrases, even dictating what people can or cannot wear based on cultural ownership of certain styles. According to woke culture, wearing items associated with another culture can be labeled as racism or cultural appropriation. But Phil questions whether this approach truly promotes understanding or simply creates more division.
Okay, but a lot of the time that people that I've seen are called out for this, it's not that they were making fun or mocking in some way. It was just that they had adopted a fashion or a style or whatever.
What Phil just can't understand is how intense and aggressive the woke people can react when someone says something they consider offensive.
But you see somebody that says something on Twitter or says something in an interview that is offensive to some group, and all of a sudden you start reading the messages they get. It's like, I hope you get ass cancer and die, you son of a bitch. I'll cut your throat. I'll come to your house and kill your children. Are you kidding me?
The amount of anger and hate the woke people can have against the people they don't agree with is so extreme. It's as if they've experienced a hate crime themselves, and Phil finds this difficult to understand. As the problem solver that Dr. Phil is known for, it is not different with the cancel culture, as he offers a solution on how to solve it.
It should be counsel culture, not cancel culture. Let's sit down and talk about it. Let me educate you. Maybe you don't understand. Maybe when you do, you won't agree, but let's talk about this.
Counsel culture versus cancel culture is what Dr. Phil praises. Instead of immediately shutting down and punishing people you simply don't agree with, is taking things way too far. Phil advocates for open dialogue, where people can discuss their differences and learn from each other. Phil touches on how social media is amplifying the intensity of the cancel culture, as people make comments online anonymously, which they wouldn't even dare to say to someone while looking in their eyes. Phil emphasizes that open, face-to-face discussions are the most progressive way to handle disagreements and bridge the gap between the left and right and work towards a more unified society. This cancellation needs to stop.
And I think that a lot of these activists have pushed too far, too long, too hard, and people have started saying, wait a minute, you're now messing with my kids, you're messing with my education. Too much is too much. Enough's enough, too much is too much.
Phil finds it absurd that in today's society, there's often no opportunity to hear opposing views and work toward a middle ground, despite everyone having common interests. People are losing jobs, getting labeled as a hater, and losing social media presence by speaking out. This is a direct attack on free speech, our fundamental right, while those silencing it are claiming to fight for their own. Dr. Phil sees this as hypocritical and deeply unfair.
I'm trying to get people to examine themselves and get back to the core values that they really hold near and dear, and not give too much attention to the loudest voice.
Mm-hmm. The loudest voice is referred to here as the woke people. The woke people are the minority, but they express their opinions the loudest and tend to set the tone for public discourse, pushing ideas that don't reflect the majority.
The loudest voice oftentimes is the shrill, fringe voices that are trying to rewrite history, biology, science, economies, all of these sort of things that they have no basis for what they're peddling. It's just that's how they want it to be. Well, that's not how it is.
When you want something a certain way, does not mean it will happen a certain way. Dr. Phil isn't a political animal. His stance is rooted in reality, factual evidence, and returning to common sense. In woke culture, common sense often takes a back seat to emotional reactions. We see this with the rise of trigger warnings, which are now placed on almost anything that could possibly offend someone. While intended to protect, Dr. Phil states they block real conversations and keep people from facing the real challenges of life.
That the vast majority, overwhelming body of literature says trigger warnings not only don't work,
They make you weaker.
they actually make you anxious. They actually create the problem that they were designed to avoid.
Phil's statement is backed by every research about trigger warnings. But why do universities that have access to these researches that state that they don't work still implement them?
Because they're virtue signaling. They're wanting to seem like, I am super woke here. I'm really sensitive. I'm protecting all of the students and creating a safe place for them to get an education.
But that is not what real education is about, Phil states. These trigger warnings actually create more problems, as they are intended to avoid people from difficult or controversial issues. But in the real world after graduation, these trigger warnings won't be there to comfort you, and you would need to face your problems heads on. Phil has had enough of this woke movement. It's time to move past the outrage, the canceling, and the constant need to cater to every demand.
somebody's got to stand up and push back, and that somebody's going to be me. And I don't think that I can turn this tide by myself, but I hope I can inspire a whole lot of people to join me in this and say, wait a minute, stop. What about common sense?
Phil has definitely inspired people and is making steps to go against the insanity of this woke movement and fight for free speech and real conversations.
There are keyboard bullies on social media and judgmental finger pointers in real life who want to police every single word and thought they do not agree with. These are all celebrities who have been called out, criticized, and condemned for cultural appropriation. If you question this at all, you get labeled really quickly, correct?
You do, immediately as transphobic.
Why do you think that is?
I think that a lot of the transgender community, they push so much for acceptance that when you immediately, or anytime you start to question them, even if it's out of the kind of goodness of your heart to try and make sure that they're making the right decision, anything that goes against their narrative is just immediately labeled as transphobic.
Dr. Phil has taken a strong stance against the push to introduce complex concepts like gender identity and pronouns to young children. In an episode featuring educators and parents, he questioned the appropriateness of discussing gender fluidity with kindergarten-aged children.
Now, after you started to transition, how else did you begin to change your life to live as a man?
I had changed my name. I started wearing a binder. I even moved cities because at the time I was very hesitant to actually come out to coworkers. So I moved about 4 hours away, got a completely different job, and introduced myself as a trans man.
He argued that children at such a young age should be focused on foundational learning, like reading and writing, before being exposed to nuanced and often divisive concepts about identity. For him, it's about preserving childhood innocence and letting kids mature before tackling such intricate topics.
I remember thinking when I was a kid, what would happen if all of a sudden people could read our uncensored minds? Think about that. Marriages, friendships, business, and government would not survive. Yet there are keyboard bullies on social media and judgmental finger pointers in real life who want to police every single word and thought they do not agree with.
And hey, real quick, if you're enjoying this content and want more insights like this, hit subscribe and help us reach these topics to a wider audience. Thank you for the support. Now, let's jump back in. Cancel culture, according to Dr. Phil, is creating a culture of fear that silences meaningful dialogue. He highlighted how the fear of being canceled is causing over half of Americans to hesitate to express their opinions, even on simple matters.
There are so many words and phrases that are off limits, it's hard to keep track. For example, some say peanut gallery is now classist and racist. First world problem is also classist. Tone deaf is ableist. Mom and dad assumes traditional gender roles. Seriously? Students on college campuses are also dealing with the self-censorship issue.
This environment, he argues, stifles critical thinking and open discussions. Dr. Phil has stressed that society can only grow and improve if people feel safe sharing their perspectives without the looming threat of social or professional ruin.
These are all celebrities who have been called out, criticized, and condemned for cultural appropriation. Has anyone here ever called someone out for cultural appropriation?
Dr. Phil didn't hold back when addressing Hollywood's relentless push for woke narratives. He criticized the industry for prioritizing virtue signaling over authentic storytelling, arguing that this trend alienates audiences who crave genuine connection rather than preachy content. He also pointed out the hypocrisy in Hollywood's diversity efforts, which often focus on optics, like ticking demographic boxes, rather than fostering meaningful change in representation behind the scenes.
You too? You have? You have? Yep. Has anybody here ever thought twice about wearing something or doing something, even cooking something, out of fear of being accused of appropriation? You have?
Cultural appropriation is another area where Dr. Phil clashed with woke activists. He questioned whether borrowing from other cultures, such as enjoying ethnic cuisine or wearing cultural attire, should automatically be labeled offensive.
My daughter had braids and she wanted me to get braids that were just like hers.
Why her but not you?
She's half black and half white.
Okay.
And so I just think that some things should stick with those cultures.
Well, no matter whether you believe it's harmful or you think people should just be allowed to do what they want, there is no doubt this is a hot button topic that people are passionate about.
Big corporations have increasingly adopted woke branding, but Dr. Phil sees through the facade. He has criticized these businesses for focusing on shallow gestures, like temporary logo changes, instead of implementing meaningful policies that benefit underrepresented communities.
Are we setting up the younger generation for failure? My next guest is a student who says he has learned firsthand about the risk of sharing his opinion. Now, he believes he was censored by college administrators over anti-leftist and anti-abortion flyers his chapter of Young Americans for Freedom posted.
For Dr. Phil, the performative nature of corporate wokeness does more harm than good by fostering cynicism and skepticism among consumers who recognize these campaigns as insincere. Dr. Phil has also aimed at social media platforms, accusing them of stifling free speech under the guise of combating misinformation.
They got permission to post this from the administration before they did. They just didn't go around tacking up stuff that hadn't been approved. Correct, Alejandro? This was
Correct, Dr.
approved
Phil,
by the
yeah.
administration.
So the original flyers that we had up, which we were taking part in the campus-wide initiative project by the Young Americans Foundation for Freedom Week, in which we were celebrating the fall of the Berlin Wall. And we find it crucial that, so many of us just don't understand how important this day in history was when the East was free from communism, from repression. And we wanted to bring this initiative to campus and show students, what, on this day, the Berlin Wall fell. On this day, millions of people were liberated and no longer had to suffer under communist tyranny.
This selective enforcement, he argued, undermines democracy and discourages critical thinking, as people become afraid to question or deviate from popular opinions. Dr. Phil believes that in the pursuit of inclusivity, society has veered into overcorrection, where traditional views are vilified and critical discussions are off limits. He argued that inclusivity shouldn't come at the cost of silencing dissenting opinions or erasing long-standing cultural norms.
If we in fact are trying to look at the humanity of other people, and we are trying to live in a place where we are trying to be respectful and mindful of folks, then we need to be aware of things that are important to other cultures that don't necessarily look like us or share the same values. So it is a thing, and people need to be aware of.
Can anybody appropriate?
Anybody can appropriate, yes.
Not just white people.
Absolutely. Appropriation is intersectional. So old people can appropriate youth culture can appropriate old folks. People who are not incarcerated can impersonate prisoners or those who are incarcerated. Men appropriate women's attire for the sake of funny and mocking.
For instance, he has highlighted how debates about language and identity often spiral into accusations of bigotry, shutting down any possibility of finding common ground.
Well, the question is, by being more trans-inclusive, are we erasing cisgender women, or as you were just saying, just woman, people whose gender identity matches the sex they were assigned at birth?
One of Dr. Phil's more controversial episodes focused on the concern that increased focus on gender inclusivity might inadvertently erase the recognition of cisgender women. He explored the tension between supporting trans rights and preserving spaces and language specific to biological women. Dr. Phil has frequently addressed the growing divide between older and younger generations, particularly regarding attitudes toward woke culture. He argued that younger generations often dismiss the wisdom and experiences of their elders in favor of rapidly evolving social norms.
I'd like to know, does the younger generation feel they're dealing with what the older generation has left behind, because that's kind of a generational thing. Do you feel like baby boomers have left you a mess behind?
Yes.
He emphasized the importance of intergenerational dialogue, suggesting that both sides could learn from each other if they engaged in open and respectful conversations. Dr. Phil warned about the rise of tribalism, where people align themselves with ideological groups and refuse to engage with opposing viewpoints. He argued that this us versus them mentality prevents society from addressing complex issues collaboratively.
Well, we're discussing the very sensitive topic of whether or not white people are discriminated against in education and the workplace. Is this a made-up issue in the news, or is there a good reason why some people feel this is real?
By fostering mutual understanding and focusing on shared goals, he believes society can move beyond divisive rhetoric and work toward real solutions. Dr. Phil has often criticized inconsistencies in woke activism, pointing out that some movements focus more on appearances than on actual change. For example, he has questioned why certain causes receive widespread attention, while others, equally deserving, are ignored.
While he's out here canceling this debt, they're still making loans. We're canceling them on this end, and they're still making loans on the front end. How is that not a higher form of insanity?
A recurring theme in Dr. Phil's takedowns is the need to uphold objective truth. He argues that society cannot function if basic facts are up for debate, citing examples of scientific or historical realities being dismissed in favor of ideological narratives.
When it comes to college grads saddled with student loan debt, some have gone to extreme measures, including skipping the country and living abroad in an attempt to escape their payments. Now, I think that we can all agree that's not the solution.
Dr. Phil has expressed concern about the direction of American education, particularly in colleges where he believes woke ideologies dominate the curriculum. He argued that higher education should be a place for diverse viewpoints, not indoctrination.
I want to introduce Mala Epinobi, who is a conservative podcast host and a public speaker. Mala, you've been listening to everything that we've been talking about here. I said there may be a third factor here. They don't have the opportunities in some of the schools they're coming from to get prepared, and that has to be addressed, but we can get back to that in a minute. But what do you think about what we're talking about so far?
Right. I'll talk to your example that you gave about the Monopoly game and a white person being able to run the track twice over and a black person starting after that. The solution is not to then pick up the black person and run them around the lap 4 times. The solution is to fix the game and make that equal, which would be a race-neutral future.
Dr. Phil's willingness to confront woke culture has solidified his position as a polarizing figure in modern media. While his critics accuse him of being out of touch, his supporters view him as a voice of reason in an increasingly chaotic cultural landscape.
But here's the thing that I don't understand. While he's out here canceling this debt, they're still making loans.
Whether you agree with him or not, there's no denying the impact of his views on this ongoing cultural debate. As society grapples with these issues, Dr. Phil's contributions ensure that the conversation remains lively, challenging, and, above all, necessary.
Did you just say I don't talk to my family because they don't have followers?
If they had followers, they'd be here right now.
You talking about your mother?
I mean, my mom has more followers than my sister.
We'll start with the unbelievable encounter between Dr. Phil and a woman who is identified as blind and who goes the extra mile to take her sight, most shockingly.
Dr. Phil, with all due respect to Jewel, but I am having a really hard time.
The interview started with one of the hosts, drawing Dr. Phil's attention to the fact that the guest who had blinded herself by pouring drain cleaners into her eyes had damaged her organs irrevocably. And Dr. Phil immediately decided to go all out, while trying to make a connection between her case and that of transgender people.
They're a woman in a man's body or a man in a woman's body, and they seek sexual reassignment surgery. That, for a long time, was considered to be extremely bizarre.
According to Dr. Phil, this case shares a lot of similarities with gender dysphoria. And in his opinion, it's a big issue because, at a time, transgender people were seen as bizarre. And now that is no longer the case. He believes that this sort of behavior was a person would take their sight due to self-belief in being supposed to be born blind would soon be affirmed by the public.
To see if in fact that is truly what they want, and only then are they considered a candidate for any type thing.
Dr. Phil spoke like a medical practitioner, dishing out advice, but he made sure to make his point about what he thinks about those willingly deciding to take off body parts. In his opinion, anyone who has dysphoria should be made to live in a simulation of the outcome of the procedure they want to undertake, and rushing into surgery is something that should never be advised.
If you question this at all, you get labeled really quickly, correct?
You do, immediately as transphobic.
Why do you think that is?
I think that a lot of the transgender community, they push so much for acceptance that when you immediately, or anytime you start to question them, even if it's out of the goodness of your heart to try and make sure that they're making the right decision, anything that goes against their narrative is just immediately labeled as transphobic.
In this video, Dr. Phil interviews a woman who once identified as a trans man and now has detransitioned back to her female identity. Dr. Phil asked some provocative questions immediately after the interview began and gave her enough time to talk about the backlash that comes to those who detransition or question the trans movement.
You went in, you said, to Planned Parenthood.
Yes.
And they gave you testosterone immediately.
Dr. Phil expressed his shock at his guest's story, being completely shocked at the fact that trans patients, who may still be minors, are allowed access to gender-affirming surgeries with minimal efforts or restrictions. Dr. Phil has always been of the opinion that minors shouldn't be given the allowance to take part in surgeries that could potentially cause health risks in the future.
Did they ask you questions? Did they do any psychological testing? Did they ask you why? What was your motive?
It was completely self-diagnosed.
Dr. Phil's questions continued to poke trans beliefs directly in their heads as he made sure every question he asked targeted a particular weak spot in the woke argument that kids should be allowed to identify as anything, and whatever they decide to become should be affirmed with surgery and other risky medical procedures like hormone ingestion.
It can be a miserable way to live if that's what they're experiencing, and there are criteria for that, and one of the criteria is time, that is persistent across time, but you didn't have any of those criteria. You didn't demonstrate that. You didn't document that. You didn't have any professional that documented that.
In this next interview, Dr. Phil went out to destroy his woke guest in a tense moment that has gone on to become one of the most talked about Dr. Phil moments. Why this happened will shock you.
You say you want to inspire LGBTQ kids, right? And you want to inspire them how?
Well, basically, I want to build the platform first, and I'll kind of do anything it takes to get there. But I just want to show people that there is someone out there like them, and you can kind of be crazy and still be LGBTQ. And
although the interview started on a weird note, Dr. Phil still tried to keep the situation under control by asking questions in his signature slow-paced mode. But as the interview progressed, things went completely haywire.
They're irrelevant?
None of them have followers. If they got followers or got rich, I'd probably talk to them again.
Now, hang on a minute. Did you just say I don't talk to my family because they don't have followers?
Dr. Phil couldn't help but express his shock at the LGBT youth who began talking down on his family members simply because they do not have as many followers as he did. According to Dr. Phil, fame and fortune don't stand as a reason to denounce family values. Something Dr. Phil has to emphasize in many videos as one of the major problems brought to society by the woke culture.
Are you talking about your mother?
I mean, my mom has more followers than my sister.
It's your mother. What difference does she make? What do you care if she has followers or not? It's your mother.
Dr. Phil certainly took this particular interview way more personally than he normally does. With every question he threw at his guest, he kept getting more shocking replies, bordering on how fame is supposed to bring isolation from friends and family.
Maybe because you guys aren't relevant either, so you don't understand.
Dr. Phil couldn't take any more of the woke comments coming from his LGBT guest, who went directly for the audience, calling them irrelevant. Dr. Phil decided to call out the kids from what he believed was a delusion of grandeur imposed on them by the woke left.
Maybe I'm out of sync, I guess, because I didn't know you till today. And if you got to wear
Dr. Phil has always been extremely critical of the new wave of Gen Z workers, who, in his opinion, are becoming lazy by the day. Many times on his shows, Dr. Phil never misses a chance to take time out to grill the Gen Z working generation for what he believes is a blatant, lazy attitude to work.
What do you do about the tremors and seizures if they put their phone down? 'Cause don't they start shaking?
Right, you gotta have good insurance, but
Yeah.
yes, it's a problem.
You actually walked in.
Dr. Phil went all out to ask about different instances of these Gen Z workers displaying their complete laziness in various workplaces. And according to Phil, it all boiled down to the woke mindset of the Gen Z generation, which has completely abandoned traditional values.
Dressed like Harry Potter, posting videos.
They were doing Harry Potter TikToks. Yep, I can't make this up. And then they told me they were working, and I was like, well, a client didn't get a hold of you.
According to Dr. Phil, the woke generation of kids is primarily being raised by the internet and the woke media, and this is going to have a long-term harmful effect on society.
Everybody here, young and old, you do get when you put stuff on social media.
Dr. Phil went all out against the woke movement, which had flooded Gen Z's mind and caused a total lack of work ethic in the working spaces. According to Dr. Phil, only those who work hard enough can add value to society.
Are loudly refusing that value system. In fact, they claim putting in extra time, work, and effort to get ahead at work is an old and outdated way of thinking.
Dr. Phil has always been very direct in his approach to Gens, and one encounter has gone on to mark him out as someone who firmly believes in traditional values of respect, which, according to him, is missing in American families.
Bailey, how are you?
Not good.
Yeah, why is that?
I was told that y'all brought someone here that I explicitly said not to bring.
Yeah, who's that?
My biological mother.
Would you like to leave?
During the beginning of the interview, Dr. Phil made it obvious that he wasn't going to be bossed around by anyone, and he made sure he was certainly understood before he took the show any further.
Because you can certainly leave, because nobody tells me who to put on my show, including you.
Okay.
So if you don't... If you think...
And when things began to look like it was getting out of hand, Dr. Phil was forced to shut it all down in order to maintain control of the show.
If you think you're entitled enough to tell me who comes on here and who doesn't, somebody has given you a really bad message.
Of course, yeah, no. If you
So
would like
who
to...
was it that told you that I was agreed to not bring somebody here?
So, what do you think? Should we embrace open dialogue and face tough issues heads on, or should we continue to silence those who think differently? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more open discussions.